Erewhon. Come with me, he said, step into the mist, my home is just over the hill in Erewhon. While many people disappear without a trace, with a variety of explanations offered as to why or how they did so, some bizarre vanishings have a common detail about them. They involve the sudden appearance of a mysterious, cloud-like mist or fog that disappears as soon as it arrives, taking those it engulfs with them. Not all of these disappearances result in those involved vanishing without a trace and not being seen again, however. Some of these incidents appear to have acted as some kind of portal phenomenon, transporting their targets thousands of miles away in an instant. Here are 10 of the most mysterious of such cases involving bizarre, cloudy mist. Shortly after checking out of a roadside hotel in Bahia Blanca, Argentina, a businessman got into his car and prepared to continue his long journey home. Almost as soon as he positioned himself in his seat and ignited the engine, a strange, thick, white mist came out of nowhere and seemed to envelop his vehicle. He couldn't see anything out of the car windows other than the fog that pressed against them. He began to panic somewhat and believed he may have even passed out, as the next thing he knew, he was standing in a field near a lonely road in the middle of nowhere. His car was nowhere in sight, nor was the hotel he had just walked out of. A heavy-duty truck making its way down the road brought him back to his senses a little, and he went to the roadside to hail it down. He asked the driver if he could take him to Bahia Blanca so that he could locate his car. The driver looked dumbfounded. He informed the businessman that Bahia Blanca was over 1,000 kilometers away. They were currently in the town of Salta. At this point, the businessman looked at his watch and saw that only minutes had passed. The driver took the businessman to the nearest police station. Upon hearing his report, the police would contact their counterparts in Bahia Blanca. The officers there confirmed that the businessman had indeed stayed there. Even more spine-tingling, when a policeman went to match the businessman's registration plate to his car, he found that the vehicle was indeed outside the hotel. What's more, the engine was still running, and the keys were in the ignition. Sometime in 1968, Graciela Lourdes, age 11, was doing what she would normally do in the long summer days in August. Playing outside her home with friends in the small town of Córdoba, Argentina. She would later recall that a strange white cloud appeared out of nowhere and then moved toward where she stood. She went to turn around and run to her home, but when she did so, she realized that she could no longer see her house. In fact, she could no longer see anything at all other than the bizarre white mist that now seemed to imprison her on all sides. The next thing she knew, she was in a strange and busy square. She could see lots of other children, although none whom she recognized. Not knowing where she was, she went to the first house she came upon and knocked on the door. When she explained she was lost, the residents of the house were surprised, to say the least. They were in Plaza España, a city some distance from where the young girl lived. When she finally made it home, she told her mother she was in a place called Erewhon. 1968 was a funny year for the mist. One evening in May 1968, several months before the strange incident of Graciela, Dr. Gerardo Vidal was driving in the area of Chas Comas, Argentina, with his wife when a strange cloud appeared to descend upon their vehicle. In what seemed an instant, both Geraldo and his wife awoke in their now stationary vehicle, and it was now daytime. Even more bizarre, they would soon discover that 48 hours had passed and that they were no longer in Argentina but on a quiet road in Mexico. They were 4,000 miles from their original location. Perhaps as a final twist, their car still had a full tank of gas. No explanation was ever arrived at as to what happened to the husband and wife, but scorch marks on the car appeared to suggest exposure to heat for some time, leading some who have researched the case to suggest that they arrived in Mexico almost instantly after the fog ensnared them. As unlikely as that sounds, where they sat in the heat for the following 2 days until coming to. Presumably, their windows were down. Oddly, another case happened at the same time in Ohio. The police report was almost word for word. In 1974, after arriving home in Essex from an evening with the wife's parents, John and Susan Day, along with their 3 children, realized that their journey had taken over 3 hours longer than it should have. Even stranger, they had no memory of why the journey had taken so long. After the entire family began to experience intense nightmares and difficulty sleeping in general, John agreed to undergo hypnotic regression in an attempt to discover what happened that evening on their journey home. According to the results of the session, John recalled that around 30 minutes into the journey, he had driven into a bizarre mist that had arrived from out of nowhere. An intense light shone in the distance in the fog. The light then hit the car and lifted it from the ground, taking it and its occupants aboard a strange craft, where Nordic-looking beings in tight-fitting attire performed various tests and procedures on them. On the dashboard they found the word Erewhon, scratched into the leather, presumably by the women's fingernails. Perhaps one of the most bizarre stories of disappearances involving strange and cloudy mist and this strange place is that of a one Mr. James Rook, manager, at the time, of the Walmart superstore in Massachusetts. Early on the morning of March 19, 2017, he and 2 other passengers, a staff member and his wife, were driving to the local diner. Mr. Rook had noticed a strange black car in front of them. He couldn't tell why he had noticed it. There was nothing particularly strange about it, but he maintained it in his sight nonetheless. He could see clearly that an elderly gentleman sat in the back of the vehicle reading a newspaper. Without warning, a puff of something gaseous, like white smoke or vapor, gushed from somewhere around the black car, completely enveloping it. When the cloud-like fog lifted, the car in front of them was nowhere to be seen. James would estimate that the whole episode, from the smoke appearing to it lifting and the car vanishing, took a matter of only seconds. Both people in the car confirmed James' story, with 2 added details. The newspaper, according to the wife, along the top was written the Erewhon Times. The staff member claimed the car's license plate read nowhere. "We thought this was strange, but when you scramble the word nowhere, you get Erewhon. Stay paranoid, my friends. Avoid the mist."